Every year, a lot of us, including myself, have said this has to be the year the Milwaukee Brewers finally take a step back. And over the last few years, the small market Brewers have lost big time talent like Corbin Burnes and Willy Adames without being able to sign stars to replace them. But here they are with the best record in Major League Baseball. How? Well, the too long didn't read answer is they have a good front office. But in this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into why the Brewers are always so good. Let's get to it. First things first, it always starts at the top. And when it comes to Brewers owner Mark Adonasio, he wants to have consistent success for his small market team. And sure, he doesn't approve of the front office going out there to go after big name free agents, but he expects them to get ahead on value and bring back talented, cost-controlled players that will keep the wheel turning at a small price. Now, I know that might sound cheap. It is what it is, but up to this point, it has worked, and he has been the one to put the right people into these positions in the first place. Instead of using that money on high-end talent, he uses it in other areas like player development, coaching, and scouting, all while generating a profit. And one area that he's really invested in is international free agency. Back in 2018, the Brewers opened a 30.5-acre state-of-the-art baseball academy in the Dominican Republic. It cost $20 million to build, and it was just completed last year in 2024. It has 1.3 million square feet of space that has a 22-room dorm and houses up to 106 players, has a big old clubhouse, a massive kitchen, a 3,400 square foot gym, and classrooms where players can finish high school while also studying English. The gym alone is massive. It's 5 times the size as one of the old Brewers facilities in the Dominican Republic. Now, sure, every major league team has a flag planted in the Dominican Republic, but the Brewers wanted to go a step further with this. One example of a player recently out of the Dominican Republic is Jesus Madej, one of the top prospects in baseball right now, and he's thriving in the Brewers system. When it comes to other international signings, you got Jackson Chourio out of Venezuela. He's a great example as well, has just under an 800 OPS along with 40 stolen bases and great defense in his first 2 seasons at the major league level so far. There's also a couple other notable prospects that spent time there, including the number 16 overall prospect in baseball, infielder Luis Pena, who's having a great year in the minors this year, along with outfielder Yoferi Rodriguez, who was a higher ranking prospect for the Brewers at one point before getting traded to the Red Sox in the Quinn Priester trade. Now let's get to the Brewers front office, and they've had some very intelligent front offices over the years with guys like David Stearns leading the way, who's made a ton of good moves with a tight budget before leaving for the Mets. And since Stearns, they've had Matt Arnold, who's done a good job in helping keep the ship in the right direction. So let's go over all the moves the front office has made, and let's start with the area where they're the most active, and that's trades. As of right now, 48% of the Brewers' current 40-man roster has been built through trades, and there's been plenty of them over the years. Let's start with former Brewers president of baseball operations David Stearns, who built the foundation for what we see in Milwaukee today. His first big move was in 2015 when he traded righty Mike Fiers and outfielder Carlos Gomez to the Astros for left-handed pitcher Josh Hader, right-hander Adrian Hauser, Domingo Santana, and Brett Phillips. Now, Fiers would still go on to have success with other organizations, but Stearns parted with Gomez right before he fell off. On the other hand, Josh Hader would go on to become one of the most dominant closers in baseball. Hauser would end up being a solid arm for them, and Domingo Santana would put up a 3 F4 season in 2016. There was also the time he sold high on Adam Lind and brought back a package including Freddie Peralta, who was unranked at the time, but he showed good metrics at the lower levels of the minors, and now he's the ace of the Brewers rotation. Back in 2017, he moved on from reliever Tyler Thornburg, who was coming off a 2.5 WAR season, and brought back the Red Sox third baseman Travis Shaw, who had power upside but hadn't fully hit his stride yet, and the number 12 prospect Mauricio Dubon. Now, Shaw, he went on to have back-to-back 30 home run seasons, and Dubon was used in a trade to bring back lefty reliever Drew Pomeranz, who had a 2.39 ERA in 25 games of the Brewers after posting a 5.68 with the Giants in 2019. Moving along further here, let's get to the biggest trade of them all, Christian Yelich in 2018. Now, at the time, it looked like the Brewers were giving up a lot here, which included Lewis Brinson, who was regarded as one of the top prospects in the game. There was also Hassan Diaz, who had power upside, Monte Harrison, who was a power speed threat, along with Jordan Yamamoto, who was pitching very well at A-ball. Unfortunately for the Marlins, none of them panned out, but Yelich went on to have an MVP season in 2018, finished second in 2019, all while posting an OPS of .868 over 8 seasons in Milwaukee. This was actually one of the rare times the Brewers spent big on a player when they signed Yelich to a 9-year extension for $215 million. There was also another time they made a splash in free agency when they signed Lorenzo Cain, who posted a 6 F4 season in 2018. In 2021, Stearns also pulled off a trade with the Rays for shortstop Willy Adames. He was hitting under 200 with Tampa in 2021, but Milwaukee adjusted his swing to pull the ball more and make better quality contact, and ended up putting up a combined 15.8 F4 while averaging almost 30 homers a season before he went to San Francisco in free agency. He was also able to land Rowdy Tellez that year, who was inconsistent in Toronto, but he went on to hit 35 home runs for the Brewers in 2022. Also, don't forget about when he acquired William Contreras when they got involved in the Sean Murphy trade by sending one of their higher-ranked prospects, Esteury Ruiz, to the A's, and somehow ended up getting back catcher William Contreras, who's been one of the best catchers in the game since. Now, Stearns ended up going to the Mets, but under Matt Arnold, they've continued to make solid moves, including Mark Canha and Carlos Santana in 2023, which helped stabilize their lineup that year, Nick Mears last season, who's now one of their best relievers, and Quinn Priester earlier this year, a former first-round pick with the Pirates who hadn't fully found his way, but the Brewers altered his pitch mix by utilizing his cutter more, getting more action on his slider, and simply throwing more strikes, which leads me to the next point. Not only have they made a bunch of high-value trades to improve the team, but they've also done well at getting ahead in trades. One big example here was a guy I mentioned earlier in Josh Hader, who they got from Houston, but they traded him a couple of years before free agency since they already had Devin Williams and his value was very high, so they sent him to the Padres, which landed them a package headlined by lefty Robert Gasser, who was pitching well before he had to get Tommy John, and Esteury Ruiz, who I just said earlier, was used to bring back William Contreras. There was also trading Corbin Burns a year before he got to free agency to the Orioles for shortstop Joey Ortiz and lefty DL Hall. Now, with Ortiz, he's not doing much with the bat as of right now, but he is their starting shortstop, and he is the 5th best defense according to Fangraphs, while Hall is starting to show some of the upside he once had as a top prospect in their bullpen. Now, the most recent blockbuster trade they made was sending Devin Williams to the Yankees for Nestor Cortez and Caleb Durbin. Now, with Cortez, he only made 2 appearances for the Brewers because of an elbow injury before getting dealt to the Padres in a trade for 28-year-old minor league outfielder Brandon Lockridge, who is probably going to end up being the next genius move for the Brewers. Just you wait. Back to the Devin Williams trade, though. Caleb Durbin seemed to be overlooked by the Yankees because of his lack of power, but since he's come to the Brewers this year, he's been solid, and now he's their everyday third baseman with an on-base percentage of around .340. So as you can see, they've done very well with the trades, finding diamonds in the rough like Freddie Peralta and getting more out of guys like Willy Adames, Quinn Priester, Travis Shaw, Rowdy Tellez, but they've had others as well, even this year with Andrew Vaughn. Now, Vaughn was a 3rd overall pick back in 2019 because he was a great hitter coming out of college, but he never fully found his way with the White Sox, so eventually they traded him to the Brewers for Aaron Savali, and right now, that is looking great. All the Brewers did with him was make a couple of small mechanical adjustments, including a bit of a wider and slightly more open stance closer to the plate. With the White Sox this year, he had a 0-degree close stance, 31.3 inches of depth in the box, and 30.3 inches off the plate. But since coming to the Brewers, his stance is open 3 degrees, with 32.1 inches of depth in the box and 28 inches off the plate. This is helping him be in a better position to swing and turn on fastballs more in the zone. It's also helped his bat speed. With the White Sox, he was averaging 70 miles per hour, and since coming to the Brewers, that's up a full mile per hour at 71.3. It's also helped him track pitches better and make better swing decisions. He's swinging 66% in zone with the Brewers compared to 63% with the White Sox. When it comes to outside swing percentage, he had a 36% in Chicago, and that's down to 27% with the Brewers. So as you can see, the Brewers have hit really well when it comes to trades, but they've also had a lot of success in the draft. There was Devin Williams back in 2013, who the Brewers converted into a reliever instead of sticking with him as a starter because he had command issues, but they leaned heavily into his nasty changeup, and now he's the all-time ERA leader among all relievers in Brewers history. They took Brandon Woodruff in the later rounds, who ended up ranking 10th overall in Fangraph wins above replacement among all starting pitchers from 2019 to 2022. In 2016, they hit big time with Corbin Burnes in the 4th round, who ended up winning the Cy Young in just 5 years after getting drafted. There was also Bryce Terang in 2018, who's now one of the better second basemen in the game. There was Sal Frelick in 2021, who's one of the best contact hitters in the game. And of course, there was second-round pick Jacob Misarowski in 2022. He actually had some reliever risk because of his size, and he had some issues with command, but instead of trying to force the issue, the Brewers just trusted his great velo and stuff, and here he is this season striking out over 12 batters per 9 and even getting an invite to the All-Star game. However, it's not just the trades, it's not just the draft, it's not just the international signings, but it's the player development that's the key here, where they've really invested heavily in, especially on the pitching side. Back in 2019, the Brewers spent $60 million to create their renowned pitching lab that uses a bunch of advanced technology, including high-speed cameras, radar, and real-time biomechanical data that gives instant feedback to the pitchers and the coaches. They use this technology to help improve pitches and velo, which has also led to improved pitch mixes. And there's been plenty of examples of this not only helping guys take a next step, but also getting guys back on track, like Frankie Montas, who was struggling with the Reds before they traded for him last year. They just simply had him raise his arm slot a little bit to help him get a bit more velo, and he saw improved results. There was also Nick Mears, who I mentioned earlier, who had an ERA above a 5 with the Rockies, but after tightening up his slider, he ended up getting much better results out of it, and now he has an ERA under 3 despite less strikeouts. I also mentioned Quinn Priester earlier. After trading for him from the Red Sox, the Brewers altered his pitch mix by utilizing his cutter more and getting more action with his slider to help produce better results. And another guy that's done well for them is Tobias Myers. After bouncing around between the Orioles, Rays, White Sox, Guardians, and Giants, he was eventually released, but the Brewers signed him as a minor league free agent. Now, the strengths the Brewers noticed with Myers was that he had a lot of vertical movement with his fastball, a good cutter, and an above-average changeup with a curveball in the mix as well. Now, he always had pretty good stuff, but he could never seem to find the right mix. But with the Brewers, they had him simplify things, going mostly to his fastball that had that good movement, along with his good cutter and slider, and occasionally mixing in the changeup. Now, on the hitting side of things, they do use technology, but they more so focus on the hitter's strengths, and instead of trying to completely overhaul something if it's not working, they simply just try to build on those strengths and make small tweaks if necessary. The best example of this is who I mentioned earlier with Andrew Vaughn, who made a slight adjustment in the box to get into a better position and let his natural ability take over. But I also want to mention another example in Isaac Collins, who the Brewers got in the Rule 5 draft. He was ranked 470 by Baseball America in the 2019 draft, and he was a Rule 5 pick back in 2022, who had a 684 OPS at AA before the Brewers plucked him from the Rockies. Now, he was a solid switch hitter that got on base a lot with speed in college, and despite struggling overall in 2022 in the Rockies organization, he had a pretty low swinging strike percentage at only 10.5%, and he had over a 400 on base in 2021 at A-ball. His game just wasn't really translating in Colorado. The Brewers looked past those flaws, though. They made some adjustments to fit with his good plate discipline, and here he is this year with an OPS above 840. Now let's shift gears to more what we see on the field. Now, do the Brewers have the likes of Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto? No, but to make up for the lack of superstar players, they focus on the small things like the fundamentals at the plate, in the field, and on the base paths. Now, sure, we all love to see those guys at the plate hit a ball 1,000 feet like Ohtani or Judge, but since they're not going to pay those guys, what they try to do instead is fill the gap with what doesn't pop off the stat sheet, and that's the plate discipline. As of right now, they have the second lowest outside swing percentage and have the third lowest since 2022, which has resulted in the fifth lowest strikeout percentage this season and 3rd overall in on-base percentage. They also put the ball in play a lot. They rank in the top 10 in contact percentage over the last 3 years, and when they get on base, they're just as good. They rank 1st overall in base running, 2nd overall in steals, and 9th overall in speed. And when it comes to the defense, they rank 4th overall in Fangraph defense, 2nd overall in outs above average, and 7th overall in defensive runs saved. One reason they're good at this is because they've had disciplined managers like Craig Counsell for a long time before he went to the Cubs, and now Pat Murphy, who actually had this to say on their approach.
It's a priority. You got to base run, you got to defend. If you're going to be a small market team and compete, those two things are a given. Understanding how to stay under control, understanding what plays are possible, not trying to make the great play, but just trying to make every play you can. They understand if you're going to play here, the defensive part of this thing is critical.
And last but not least, let's talk about team chemistry. Now, the Brewers don't just look for talent, but they've put a big emphasis on putting teams together where personalities are going to mesh well together. A couple of years ago, the Brewers signed free agent first baseman Rhys Hoskins, who's had a good reputation of being a clubhouse leader and brings a positive influence into the clubhouse. Not too long ago, Hoskins got some teammates together in the clubhouse, and he brought out some original packs of Pokemon cards from 1999. Misarowski got a pack, and he pulled an extremely rare Charizard, which is like pulling a Honus Wagner with baseball cards. When Hoskins was asked why he wanted to get his teammates involved, he simply said, the power of friendship. So to wrap this up, the Brewers have pretty much excelled at all of the small things necessary to build a winning team every single year, despite not being able to pay for high-end talent. They draft and develop talent well, they excel in international free agency, while also developing international players well and taking care of them. They make great trades, they find diamonds in the rough, they get players back on track, and they use technology to their advantage. It's basically Moneyball, but way better, in my opinion. Now, the question is, will it be enough to help them finally make a run at the World Series and maybe even win it for the first time in franchise history? I don't know. I'll let you decide. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. But everybody, that's all I got for right now. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.